The Amerindians, done by Joel Dixon, Jade Mullings, Leanna Jones, Damani White, and Joshua Billings. The most popular theory of how the Amerindians arrived in the Americas is migration from Asia into North America via a frozen land bridge known as the Beringia or Bering Strait in search of food, and also approached lands by way of the Yucatan Peninsula, Florida Peninsula, or islands of Trinidad and Tobago at the Orinoco River in South America. Archaeological evidence shows that these people ate shellfish and were referred to as the Preceramic group. Most of these groups who came during the Preceramic period were acculturated with the Saladoid, Barrancoid, and Ostranoid cultures, from which came the Tainos, Kalinagos, and Mayas. With that being said, let's bring our focus to the first group called the Tainos. Taino in the native language means good or noble. They were also called Arawaks based on similarities in language spoken by the Arawak Indians in Guyana. They inhabited the Greater Antilles, Jamaica, Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, also Trinidad and the Bahamas. They also settled in the northern Lesser Antilles. Most notably, those who settled in Bahamas were also called Lucans. Taino subsistence consisted of farming, gathering, hunting of small birds, sea and land animals, fishing, and shellfish gathering. Among these, farming was most important. The Tainos set up their villages along the coast. Being near the water was vital for farming as well as fishing. Cotton, maize commonly called corn, beans, calabash, yucca also called cassava, and tobacco were grown, while pineapple, palm nuts, guava berries, and guaiaca roots were cultivated. Around the houses of the Taino village, calabash, cotton, and tobacco were grown. Calabash was used as a water container. Location was also essential for trade. Rouse explains that the Taino were exquisite crafters of different materials such as wood and stone, and were accomplished weavers of cotton. Many of the items were used not only for personal adornment, but for trade as well. Their extensive knowledge of sea travel allowed them to create long-distance trade networks. Rouse indicates these canoes were capable of traveling great distances for fishing, raiding, and trading. Why did the Tainos settle where they did? Coastal areas were important to the Taino due to their reliance upon marine life for a portion of their diet. In addition to this, their increasing socio-political influence and culture would flourish with the extensive trade networks that they frequently utilized. The inland settlements were equally as important, as it allowed access to farming lands, fruits, and berries which could be gathered, and land animals and birds which could be hunted to further supplement their diet. It also allowed access to materials which were used for crafting, trading, and making canoes. Historians can prove the existence of Tainos in the Caribbean, based on elaborate remains, most notably ball court ceremonial plazas and complex carvings. Archaeologists work in terms of pottery in tracing their origins, since it constitutes 95% of the artifacts found. Now let's take a look at the Kalinagos. The Kalinagos, also called Caribs, since they speak Caribbean, have very similar lifestyles with the Tainos, since they are both Saladoid. According to historians, they settled in Grenada, Tobago, St. Vincent, St. Kitts and Nevis, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola, and are a part of a group called Neo-Indians and a subgroup known as Saladoid, who arrived to the Caribbean from South America in 300 BC and settled in the Lesser Antilles. The Kalinagos lived in small autonomous settlements, growing cassava and other crops. They had a very well-structured civilization. The males were given strenuous tasks like fishing, construction, hunting, etc., whilst females took care of the domestic jobs like preparation of food, caretaking, and grooming the males. They took great pride in their physical appearance. Newborns' foreheads were flattened because they believed that it made them more attractive. The number of wives a male had spoke volumes about his social status. They were said to be fierce and warlike, while the Tainos were calmer and more reserved. Karens were their enemies and chased them from South America and raided their economy. During these raids, women were abducted while the male captives were executed. This resulted in most Carib women speaking Arawak. They seized some of the northern territories in the Lesser Antilles, along with some eastern territories in the Greater Antilles. In the 17th century, they tried to reconquer the Lesser Antilles so they could obtain the southern territories. When the Spanish arrived, the Kalinagos had just began expanding their civilization across their newly attained lands. During the attack of the Spanish, the population of the Neo-Indian groups decreased, and some became extinct. The Florida Museum provides evidence to the existence of the Kalinagos in the Caribbean. Historians measured, compared, and analyzed the fossils of the earlier civilizations, and one of the three discovered were the Caribs. Also, Keegan stated that the sudden appearance of Malakoid pottery also corresponds with a general reshuffling of people in the Caribbean after a 1,000-year period of tranquility, further evidence that Carib invaders were on the move, Keegan said. And finally, the Mayas. Mayas refer to both modern-day people all over the world and their ancestors who built an ancient civilization that stretched throughout much of Central America. They excelled at agriculture, pottery amongst other things, and left behind an astonishing amount of impressive architecture and symbolic artwork. But most of the great stone cities of the Maya were abandoned by AD 900. They lived in three separate sub-areas: the northern Maya lowlands on the Yucatan Peninsula, the southern lowlands in the Petén district of northern Guatemala and adjacent portions of Mexico, Belize and western Honduras, and also the southern Maya highlands in the mountainous region of southern Guatemala. Maya civilization built the great stone cities and monuments that have fascinated explorers of the region. Socioeconomic conditions of war eventually triggered mass migration of Mayans into America in 1970, which lasted until the end of the Guatemalan Civil War. They occupied much of the northwestern part of the Isthmus of Central America, from Chiapas and Yucatan, now part of southern Mexico, through Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, and El Salvador, and into Nicaragua. Maya people still live in the same region today. Their settlement pattern included a regional movement cycle from one part to the next for 1,020 to 1,040 years of 4 May cycles. For example, they started in the northern Yucatan Peninsula, settled there, and would move to the south afterwards to do the same. Once the 2 regional cycles had been completed, this would mark the end of a supercycle that is about 2,048 to 2,080 years, 8 May cycles of 256. But why did they settle there? They did because of the access to rivers and the enriched soil. A series of rivers originates in the mountains and flows towards the Pacific Ocean on the west coast and towards the Gulf of Mexico, which served as passageways for canoes to travel from one city to the other. In the southern highland valleys, volcanic eruptions enriched the earth, and the spring-like climate and fertile valleys made this a popular place to settle, despite volcano threats. Today, this area supports the largest Maya population. Archaeologists today found many artifacts in the region which the Maya settled. On view in the Hall of Mexico and Central America include 9th century Mayan stone carvings that depict warrior lords bearing weapons. These carvings offer invaluable insights into the ancient Mayan civilization, a collection of independent city-states that alternately warred and traded with each other. And that concludes our presentation for today. We do hope you were well informed, and these are our references. Au revoir.
Created using Powtoon.